Hey guys, welcome back to my channel and welcome to today's video, which is my February reading wrap up. I read 8 books this month, which is a little bit low for me. Usually I've been reading like 10 to 12 in the past few months, but I don't know why I just seem to be reading books a lot slower in February. You know, it is a shorter month, maybe that was it, but I just felt kind of busier overall and I felt like I had less time to read. I enjoyed almost all of these books. I had a good time with them and I had a good month of reading. I'm trying to look at the stack now and do a little breakdown of the genres that I read. I should have done this before, but we're just doing it in real time. So I read 2 thrillers, 1 historical fiction. I read 2 romances, 1 book that is like kind of fantasy, kind of romance, 1 straight up fantasy, and then 1 fiction thriller-ish sort of book. I'm kind of confused on the genre of this one. Okay, so let's get right into it. I'm just gonna give my thoughts on each book and my rating. The first book I read this month was None of This Is True by Lisa Jewell, and I'm sure you've seen this book around. It is very popular at the moment. Lisa Jewell is a very popular thriller author, and I had never read her work before, so I wanted to give one of her books a shot, and I loved it. So the premise of this book is that 2 women meet in a restaurant bathroom on their birthday, and they share this birthday. So they were born in the same hospital on the same day. Their names are Alex and Josie. Alex is this like podcaster, influencer type of woman, and Josie immediately becomes very attached to this birthday twin thing and very attached with Alex and wants to get herself on Alex's podcast to tell her story. So she pretty much makes that happen, and then the book goes from there. And the one thing that I've taken away from this book is that it was so addictive. Like, so addictive. I know most thrillers are addictive and have you on the edge of your seat, but this one, I was on the edge of my seat more than anything else ever in my life before. It was so good, and I was immediately invested in the story and the plot line, and I don't know, I literally inhaled this book. Like, I devoured it in 6 hours from start to finish. I just read it one night from like open to close, and I couldn't go to bed until I figured out what happened. Like, it was just one of those books that I needed to know what happened. You can kind of tell from the title, but the whole time you're like, is this true? Is she telling the truth? What's really happening? And yeah, that's like the title of the book. The whole time this book was giving me 5-star vibes because, like I said, I was so invested, but it ended up being a 4.5-star rating just because the ending felt a little bit unsatisfying. Like, it definitely didn't tie up everything like I like everything to be tied up in a thriller. But yeah, the ending wasn't as good. I've said this before, but the journey on this book was so much better than the destination. Like, the ending definitely didn't hit, but I had so much fun reading this book. The reading experience was so enjoyable that it definitely deserves a high star rating for me. It just can't be a 5, but it is a 4.5, and I really, really love this book. I think it was an excellent story, and I would recommend it to anyone who likes a thriller or just likes to read in general. Like, this is a phenomenal book. The next book I read in February was The Cruel Prince by Holly Black, and this was a book that I had been putting off for a while, but I was like excited to read. I was anxious to read. I don't know, it's a pretty popular fantasy book on TikTok and just in the reading world in general. It is a YA trilogy fantasy series, and I think it kind of is controversial. Like, a lot of people love it and it's very popular, but I know a lot of people also read it because of that hype and then they hate it. So I didn't really know what to think going into it, but I definitely was surprised at how much I enjoyed it. I really ended up liking this a lot. I would even say I loved this book. I thought it was really, really good, and I had so much fun with it. I gave it a 4-star rating. It pretty much follows this human girl, Jude, who lives in the fairy world with her sister and her adoptive dad of sorts. And then it follows her on this journey to power and politics and relationships and messiness. And yeah, it's just kind of the story of her in this world. And even now that I'm trying to describe it, I could see why people don't like this book. I know people find it boring, and yeah, I can see why, because I was just trying to say what it's about and like I couldn't come up with much. But I actually really loved it. It was very fantastical. I always try to use that word and I never know if it means what I think it means, but like very mythical. Like, there's goblins and mermaids and these giant toads that they ride as horses. All these like winged creatures and creatures with horns. It was heavy on the politics, but I enjoy that stuff. I like the world building in fantasy books. I like the strategizing and just the politics in general. So that is like a check in the column for me. It was just like a solid fantasy book in my opinion. I will say that it's a book that like I don't think too much on. I kind of tend to do that in fantasy books in general. Like, if I think too much about all these like winged creatures, like it just, it doesn't work for my brain. So I just kind of like go along for the ride and the story. And definitely about like halfway through this book, I was very invested, like turning the pages like crazy to see what happened. It made me excited to read the rest of the series. I'm currently on the second book right now, and I'm having the same feelings again. It's not too serious, I'm just having fun. And there is like a little dusting, sprinkling of a romance. I can tell that it's gonna be very, very slow burn, if it's even there at all. And hopefully the ending is very satisfying. So yeah, I'm having fun with the series. 4 stars. I enjoyed this book way more than I thought I would. The next book I read was my favorite book of the month. Honestly, one of my favorite books of all time, probably. And that is Mad Honey by Jodi Picoult and Jennifer Finney Boylan. I thought this book was so incredible. It shot right to the top of my all-time favorites list. And also, like, not just my favorite list, but the list of books that I would always recommend to people. I thought it was just phenomenal. This is also the most shocking book I have ever read. There is a twist in here that made me audibly gasp. I had to stop, I had to look around, I had to like check in on everything. It literally rocked my world, which made me love this book even more. But besides the twist, I loved it in general. And the premise of this book is that the main guy, Asher, he's a teenager, about 18 years old. He is accused of murdering his girlfriend. Her name is Lily. And then the story is told from Lily's perspective in the past, kind of the love story, the romance of her and Asher. And then in the present with Asher's mother's perspective on the murder trial. So that murder mystery trial is the driving force of the book, and it had me so engaged. I was literally dying to know what happened, dying to know the truth. But there were so many other things that were explored throughout it that I also loved. So many themes like relationships, love, abuse, loneliness, parent-child relationships, just trust, honesty, secrets, like so much. And I thought it was all so good. And I don't know, there's just something about Jodi Picoult's writing that I find so refreshing. Even though she often writes about heavier topics, it kind of feels like a breath of fresh air reading her books. I also feel like she defies genres and she kind of pulls at you from all angles. Overall, I just found this to be such a powerful, important, thought-provoking, and beautiful story that I will always recommend. It also made me think about some real-world, real-life topics in a way that I've never thought about before. I found it to be very eye-opening and just incredible. I love this book and it's one of my favorites. And if I didn't mention, this is a total 5-star read for me. Perfect 5-star. The next book I read was Say You Swear by Megan Brandy. I had really high hopes for this book because everyone says that it is a very like heart-crushing, emotional, make you feel love story, and those are my favorite types of love stories. I love that. It didn't exactly hit like that for me, but it is a college sports romance. It kind of follows this big group of friends in their freshman year of college, I believe, and then it also follows them during summertime where they spend time together at this beach house and just all of that, the different relationships, the different friendships. And there is a main love story in here that I could see why people think it's like an epic romance. But for me, it really wasn't that, simply because I kind of couldn't get past a lot of other things in this book. I rated it a 3 stars, which might not seem that low, but it's pretty low for me. Like my average rating is a 3.5 star. Like in my mind, books start at a 3.5 and they can either stay there or they'll go up to a 4 if they really impress me, or they'll go down if I have negative thoughts. And I do have negative thoughts about this book. I'm gonna try and not be too negative. But yeah, I wouldn't recommend this to anyone, and I didn't really like it. There are some parts I liked about it, but overall, I did not enjoy it. And the main reason is because it just seemed so unbelievable to me. The way they acted, what they said, just everything that happened, it just didn't seem real in any way. It also kind of felt like trauma dumping. Like if you read this book, you'll know what I mean. It was just thing after thing after thing for the sake of that thing to happen. So much so that it kind of felt ridiculous to me. Also, going into this, I knew that it was going to be Wattpad energy. Like everyone said, it reads like Wattpad, and I thought I knew what that meant going into it. But I don't think I actually did. But I did like it a little bit, and I didn't DNF it. I almost DNF'd it, but I wanted to know what happened in the story. So that's why I gave it at least a 3. Like if I give it a 2, it's really bad and kind of has no redeeming qualities. There were some things that were redeeming, but overall, my least favorite book of the month. Next, I read Part of Your World by Abby Jimenez, and this was actually the book for my in-person book club with my friend. I was super excited because it had been on my list for a while, and my overall thoughts are that I really liked it. I gave it a 3.75 star rating, which is like, I really liked it, I just didn't love it. So it was a solid, very good rom-com. I think I liked it a little bit more at the beginning. Like my immediate thoughts were that it was super refreshing. I immediately liked Abby Jimenez's writing style. I thought the banter between the two characters was really good. I thought it was super fun, and yeah, I was just having really good vibes. I think it kind of went off a little bit towards the middle and the end, just like how I usually feel in rom-coms. They just kind of feel like a bit of a lot of the same for me, and that's just kind of what this felt like. But again, for a rom-com, I did really like it. I thought the plot was really interesting. The whole vibe is that the woman is a little older. I think she's like 37 and the guy is maybe 25. And she is a successful, well-educated, rich doctor. And she meets the main guy, Daniel, who is from this small town. He doesn't have a lot of money. He works at his family's inn, I think it is, or bed and breakfast. He's also like a woodworker, carpenter. So they come from different worlds, and the story is kind of how they come together through all of that. And I thought Daniel was so dreamy. That is probably my main takeaway from this book. Like, he is a prime book boyfriend. I think things did get a little bit repetitive and frustrating at times, but overall I had a fun time. And my most important thing in a romance book is that the romance feels real, and it really did here. I thought it was well developed. It felt real. The characters felt real. It is a solid rom-com that I would recommend. The next book that I read was Bride by Ali Hazelwood, and this was actually my second favorite book of the month. So as you could guess, I rated it 5 stars. And I originally thought, I don't know why I thought this, maybe I saw it somewhere or I heard it somewhere, that this was a YA fantasy romance. And let me tell you, it is not YA, because it is one of the most spiciest books I have ever read. And 2, it's not really technically fantasy, it is paranormal. I don't really know what the difference is there, but on the back of the book, it literally says paranormal. So it is an arranged marriage, paranormal romance between a werewolf and a vampire. Now, immediately, I knew that that was the perfect setup for a book for me. If you just heard that and you were like, wow, that is so not my cup of tea, then yeah, this is not going to be your cup of tea. But I immediately knew that I was going to love this, or I had hoped that I was going to love it, and I was right. I really, really did. It's like my perfect guilty pleasure read. I love like mafia romances. This actually really reminds me of that because there's a lot of arranged marriages in those books, and I ate it up. Like, this book made me so giddy. I just had so much fun, and I rated this 5 stars on like pure enjoyment. It also has like an element of fated mates, which I just love in a fantasy book. Besides being like super, super spicy with very detailed scenes, and let me just tell you, the intimacy between werewolves and vampires is not exactly the same as it is between humans, so just leaving that there. It was also a great romance. There was so much tension, so much angst. It made me happy. It made my heart hurt at times. Like, I almost wanted to cry. There was also some like world building. This world has 3 species, the humans, the werewolves, and the vampires. They talk a lot about the dynamics between them, the politics between them, and I thought it was the perfect balance between romance and the plot and the world building and all of it. I thought it was a really, really phenomenal book. And I think there's going to be more in this series, so I can't wait to read more. Also, I loved how Ali Hazelwood's writing really shined through. Like, it still had that like quirkiness even without the STEM, which Ali is known for. And yeah, I just can't wait to read more of her books. A video I plan on doing on here is finishing her catalog and like ranking the books in the order that I like them. So yeah, stay tuned for that. Hopefully I'll do that like this month. Next, I read Winter Garden by Kristen Hanna, and oh my god, you guys, this book was a doozy. Like, I read The Nightingale by Kristen Hanna, and I didn't think that a book could make me cry more. A book could. This one did. This one made me cry so much. Like, I literally have never cried harder in a book, and I cried within the first 40 pages, so I knew I was in for a journey there. This is another historical fiction. It takes place in World War II, just like The Nightingale, but it is focused on the siege of Leningrad, which happened under Stalin's rule or regime. I don't know what you would call it, but I actually had never really learned about this event in history. So it was really cool to read a more like in-depth account. Although it's historical fiction, it still gave me like insight. This book is modeled a little differently. I would say that more than 50% of the story takes place in present time. It follows this family of 3 women. It's 2 sisters and their mom. And the historical fiction part was less a part of the story. It was of course still there, like that's the main thing, but it only happened in like the second half. And that's my one qualm with this book. I gave it 4.5 star rating because the beginning did feel a bit slow to me. It felt like it took a little bit to get into the real meat of the story, which is, like I said, the story that takes place in the past. but once you get there, oh my gosh, it is incredible. It was such an eye-opening story. It was so moving. It was so heartbreaking, so emotional, just all the things that Kristen Hanna always delivers. She delivered yet again with this one. And even though I thought the beginning was slow, I still did feel pretty invested and interested in what was going on. Like, the story did hold my attention. And the ending of this was phenomenal too. It got tied up so well, similarly to how it happened in The Nightingale, which you could say was like a bit too coincidental or predictable, but like the way that Kristen Hanna can break your heart and then kind of put it back together, I think is part of the journey, because I felt happy tears, I felt sad tears, I felt all the emotions through this book. And it was just really, really good. Like, Kristen Hanna, I don't think can write a bad book, and this is just a perfect example of that. It wasn't the perfect style for me, and that's why it's not a 5-star, but it's very close. It was a 4.5. It's such a good story. And then the last book I read in February was The Fury by Alex Michaelides. I think that's how you say his last name. But he is the author of The Silent Patient, which is a very, very popular thriller. I've never actually read that, but now that I've read this book, I'm thinking that I need to, because I really enjoyed this one. I gave it 4 stars. And my favorite thing about this book was that the chapters were so short. I'm talking 5 pages or less short. If we're being honest, that's not actually my favorite part, but it was one of my favorite parts. I just love a book like that. It helps the story move so fast. It helps you get right into it. It keeps things exciting. And yeah, it just made the reading experience really fun and really easy. It is sort of a whodunit kind of book that takes place on a private Greek island. There's this whole cast of characters. There's this famous actress who is kind of like the main person, also a theater actress, and then a playwright who is our narrator. And he is quite the interesting, slightly crazy narrator. He tells the story in a way that is so unique. It's very like casual conversation style. And I thought it was really cool and really fun. And just like the writing style in general was really fun. Also just incorporated lots of things that typically I don't find in thrillers. Very thought-provoking and insightful. Lots of insights into the human psyche and like why people act in the way that they do. Also, this book had 2 things that I feel like you can find in a lot of thrillers. There was like a mastermind plotter, which I happen to love that in a book. Like, I like being in that sort of brain. There's also like the sort of effect where you're peeling back layers upon layers upon layers. I don't know if that makes any sense, but it's like the rug keeps being pulled out from under you because you feel like you have your footing, and then something else happens that changes your whole perspective on what's happening. Overall, I think this was a very solid thriller. I really enjoyed it. I was very engaged. I wanted to know what happened. I thought it was very bingeable. I didn't want to put it down. All of the things that a thriller is supposed to do. So like, it just did what it had to do, and that's why I gave it 4 stars. But the whole time I knew it wasn't going to be a 5-star. Like, not once did it give me 5-star feeling. It just gave me like good book, solid energy, good vibes, and I would recommend it. Okay, so those are the 8 books that I read in February. Like I said, it was a pretty slow month of reading for me, but a good month of reading. I read a lot of good books. I think I rated 6 out of the 8 books 4 stars or above, which, you know, you can't ask for more than that. And now I feel like I've been talking for hours. Honestly, I kind of have been talking for hours, and I need to wrap this video up. So that is the wrap of my February reading wrap up. Also, I can't say that word, February. It like doesn't flow out of my mouth at all, and every time I say it, I'm self-conscious of it. But yeah, no need to babble on anymore. I hope you guys liked this video. I hope you guys are liking my channel. If you haven't subscribed yet, make sure to do so. I'll be sharing lots more book videos. My March TBR is already up. I'll be sharing a monthly TBR and a monthly wrap up each month, and then also different videos mixed in there. Let me know if you've read any of these books too. I'd love to do some discussing in the comments, and I'll see you next time. Thanks for watching.